I will call the regular work session for the Oregon City Commission to order for Tuesday, October 11th, 2016. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Shaw,
Here.
Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Ide,
Here.
Commissioner Mengelberg, here. Mayor Holliday.
Here. Does anybody have any future agenda items? Okay, then. Staff has asked me to walk on an update on the membrane structures issue. We're going to take that as 3D. So we'll start out with the 16524, the Beaver Creek Employment Area Marketing Initiative. Mr. Underwood.
Thank you, Mayor. I know you've all heard of the Willamette Falls Legacy Project and the Cove Project, but I wanted to talk to you tonight about a little project we got going on the east side, which is the Beaver Creek Employment Area Nation to Work project. So it's a marketing initiative that we've begun about 2 years ago. Wait till the slide comes up here. As many of you are aware, the Portland metropolitan region as a whole is deficient in employment lands or industrial lands that are 25 acres or greater. That being known by, I took it upon myself to look around the city to see what opportunities we might have here in the city to maybe improve on that deficiency within the region. So looking around, there was several acres available and developable around the community college. So I began working with the county and the property owners to compile that industrial land, to make sure that there was buy-in from the property owners, that they were wanting to sell the property and develop the property. We drew lines, we drew boundaries, and we came up with that 86 acres. So by the time we were finishing that, well, let me step back and say, you know, we, how do I advance this? So we also did a site analysis and an economic impact analysis for those sites as well. But by the time that work was wrapping up, Clackamas Community College passed their bond measure for their improvements on all three of their campuses within the region. One of the among many products, one of the products that would impact Oregon City in that bond measure is the Industrial Technical Center that they're constructing as part of that. So immediately I saw a niche there. We have employment land surrounding that, and we have a dedicated Industrial Technical Center right in the middle of that, which I don't know of any other jurisdiction that has that sort of opportunity. So we seized that opportunity, and I went into the community college to start a partnership. We were analyzing the mutual benefits that we had. They were excited about it, and naturally we thought we would also get the chamber involved, since they have the business interest, and they could also voice that private sector advocacy and support for us during the effort. So in 2014, a little over 2 years ago, we established our steering committee, which is made up of myself, Shelley Perini, then of the community college, and Amber Holbeck, who is here tonight. And once we formed that committee, we set off on developing a strategic marketing initiative. We've put that into motion, which is centered around public outreach and creating goals and objectives and the implementation approach. So I'll just touch upon the evolution a little bit of the project since we've started the steering committee. We initially started, and I'll elaborate on these in future slides here, but just wanted to hit the high points here real quick. Our initial focus was on the 86 acres, those properties that we were hoping to market and develop. We've had a couple of stakeholder engagements. We had one workshop early in 15, and we did one Oregon City Business Alliance presentation. We realized then after that workshop that, you know, the project was much bigger, so we went back and refined a few things. We went back again to another, well, let me say we shifted strategies and looked at a broader scope. And then we had another number 2 workshop where we took the broader scope back to them and we received feedback from there. So I know you can't see this, but I'm going to kind of go over some of the high points here. This is our workshop 1 that we had in 15. Actually, it was in May 2015. And it was basically a visioning workshop. So just tossing it out there, seeing what kind of ideas we could bring back. And we were focusing on those sites specifically, on the opportunities there, the barriers that were involved, and any ideas for marketing in order to move forward. So some of the opportunities that were identified in that brainstorming session were, of course, the community college and their the opportunity for 21st century academic training programs for workforce. There's opportunity for diverse industry attraction consisting of film and media, renewable energy, advanced manufacturing, healthcare. Access is an opportunity to 213, 205, and proximity to transportation, amenities, and natural resources. Some of the barriers that were identified were, of course, development readiness. I mean, it's lacking infrastructure to serve those sites there, especially on the Beaver Creek Road portion. There are no internet capabilities there. There's some environmental impacts, natural resources overlay, some topography issues. There's competition with other cities. There's lack of public transportation in that area. And then on the marketing piece, some of the suggestions were to conduct tours, site selector tours, broker tours, that sort of thing. Something we could take charge of now. Have continued stakeholder meetings, and think about what is unique to that site compared to other industrial sites in the area. And one of those things is the Industrial Technical Center that will be built. Think about communication strategies for our marketing, media, public service announcements, published media, use of the college's digital media program, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, which we've done. And then there are partnerships, which we feel were crucial. Those partnerships would involve Clackamas County, municipalities, Greater Portland, Inc., Business Oregon, and brokers. So, and after that first workshop, we realized that, these stakeholder meetings, this engagement that we're involved in is really starting to help shape our work and elevate it to some point. We were bringing along champions, even after the first workshop in the Oregon City Business Alliance meeting. That was also a visioning work session as well, along the same lines as the workshop 1. So we were identifying champions through this and realizing there were some big ideas that were coming out of these discussions. And also, we really want to give credit to them because the stakeholders were providing a really more in-depth, comprehensive insight to our scope, which has caused us to refine our strategy and broaden the scope somewhat. The champions that we've identified thus far are coming from the worlds of manufacturing, education, government, commercial real estate, small business, service clubs, and finance. So it's quite an array. So getting the workshop feedback from number 1 in Oregon City Business Alliance visioning session, we really broadened the scope to look at business support outside of this 86 acres and employment as well, because there's so much potential out there surrounding this site. So then we took that broad scope, went back to what we created a workshop number 2, said, this is what you've told us, this is what we've heard, this is our new broad scope, this is what we're looking at now. What other things do we need to think about in this broader scope moving forward? And so from that, we got a lot of big ideas that came out of that. Some of those ideas included communication and education being that's the key in moving forward. Communication and education for that area. Continue to make connections throughout the community and provide site flexibility. we need to practice targeted recruitment, which I'll allude to a little bit later. And this one I really liked was recruit a destination company that has the potential as a tourism draw. And then another was aligning training offerings at CCC with workforce needs of the employment area, which I think is a natural. Seek to locate a variety of industry, concentrate on family wage jobs, use of social media to promote and advocate, and garner political support and advocate with the business community. So, what is the Beaver Creek employment area? Well, this is where we started. This is the 86 acres that I was telling you about. 2 industrial sites. You'll see in a later slide, one's OCDS 1 and OCDS 2. Total of 86 acres, 11 total parcels. And we've estimated a complete build-out of construction of development at $27 million. So this is what the broader scope is. This is what we have now as the Beaver Creek employment area. So this includes, and I'll need a mouse if I could, if I can point some of this out. So this includes shopping center here, OC Point, and Berry Hill Shopping Center. So we feel like these areas provide the supportive retail or supportive infrastructure for development here. Also the community college, of course, that's a natural. And then one that's not on the map is the Beaver Creek Road Concept Plan, which would also provide workforce housing and additional supportive commercial and office. So, looking at this whole area, there are several key attributes that have been identified. One obvious one is the proximity to the Clackamas Community College. And within a 10-mile radius, we have access to a large workforce in the area. About 17,500 is what is estimated to draw from for this area alone. We have an enterprise zone that overlays this area, and that is the tax abatement program focused on new capital, whether it's new construction or expansion of an existing facility, and it's tied to job creation as well, living wage job creation. We also have the Economic Development Improvement Program, where businesses locating in this area could be eligible for. That is just a quick reminder, a grant up to $150,000, which is also targeted to new capital, and it's related to job creation as well. And then there's excellent traffic circulation, which includes Highway 213 Beaver Creek. Very quick access. Yes? Do you have a question?
No,
Oh.
that's,
Okay.
I thought
Not in the morning, not
at
in
your
the morning.
excellent traffic circulation.
I thought we were talking
Exquisite
about Beaver Creek Road there for a minute.
9 o'clock at night, possibly.
So great traffic circulation, Highway 213 Beaver Creek. There's the future 213 Beaver Creek intersection improvements that would provide greater safety and access. The future Myers Road extension, which would significantly help circulation. And there's also, as part of the bond measure passed by Clackamas Community College, a new and expanded public transportation hub that they will be including on campus. So it's minutes from transportation assets or amenities like I-205, I-84, I-5, the Port, Portland, and PDX. And then again, it's the access to the supportive retail, commercial, or the infrastructure that I pointed out on an earlier slide. So, if you're going to have an initiative, if you're going to market something, you got to have a purpose. So, this purpose that we've come up with is primarily from the first workshop in the OCBA meeting. And we really feel like it hits the point of what we're trying to do. And it's to attract targeted industry to the Beaver Creek employment area by leveraging education and training resources at Clackamas Community College. And knowing this, we also realize that this area is for targeted industry to locate and provide those family wage jobs, those traded sector jobs, provide an opportunity to diversify and enhance the local economy and increase the job density, which Clackamas County is lacking in job density. It's an opportunity to capitalize and promote on the workforce training opportunities, customized training opportunities, not just for existing employers, but customizing curriculum within the college. So as when they're training, going through their education, they can go right across the street and be employed, or they can do internships. And it's an opportunity to create a direct link to education and industry. So, shared values. We kind of took an example or cue from the Legacy Falls project with their 4 core values. We feel, values such as this are important. They're kind of the glue that holds everything together as you move forward, as you advance in your initiative. So everything you do is kind of centered around those values. Now, these values weren't just made up by the steering committee. These values came out of the feedback from the public engagement that we've had. We've identified 4 of those, which are development, workforce training, lifelong learning, and quality of life. We also heard from the feedback of targeted industries. So we've identified several targeted industries. Several align with the regional targeted industries that we have, but there are a couple that fit the mold for Oregon City. So they're kind of customized for Oregon City. And the ones for Oregon City are the media production and the professional business services. So we already have kind of a thing going on here with those 2 industries. It's kind of a niche already. And so we want to continue that effort to attract more of those companies. So, we are doing some things now. We're not waiting for the official kickoff. So just wanted to point out some of the things that we are actively engaging in. So the plans for the Industrial Technical Learning Center, I believe, are in land use now, or they're going to be very, very soon. I wasn't sure of the timing when I was making this presentation as to when they're actually going to be there. But and then we've also applied for and received a $60,000 grant through the state's Infrastructure Finance Authority through their Public Works Special Public Works Fund. We are matching that with $20,000 from our funds to design a sewer main down Beaver Creek to serve those properties that are lacking utilities right now. So we're currently underway on that project. It should be done by January. By November, I should have some hard cost estimates as to what it's going to take to construct the main line out there. And then we'll start looking for funding resources for that. And the ultimate goal is to go to construction by the end of next summer or early fall.
Do you have a wild guess what that number looks like?
I don't. It's over $1 million. That's all I can say. I don't have a ballpark yet.
Okay.
So I should I think we've got 50% coming up here in a couple of weeks. So we've already incentivized the property to appeal to developers or companies. We've done some things in that regard of, again, the enterprise zone and the economic development incentive program. And I'm working with the planning department to develop some sort of pre-approval program where someone can come in, and if they're going to build to a certain spec that's been approved already by the governing body, then they will save a lot of time and money in developing that. So, and in my field, time is money, is really money, and that's one of the best incentives that you can provide a large company is time from shovel in the ground to product out the door. That's huge. And so that's kind of what we were striving for here with this program. We're continuing to gather initiative support. That's one of the reasons why we're here tonight. And then we are involved with some marketing efforts currently with the film and website development, a newsletter. We are continuously conducting tours. whether they be broker, business clients, or site selectors. We've had a few site selectors out there. And then we're involved with the asset mapping program with the county, which is basically a database where people can easily access the property and information about it online. So with that, just to highlight some of the media things. I'm sorry? Oh, sure. I'm going to do the
Video?
No, I'm going to do the website first. Just to highlight, can you open the hyperlink on that? Just highlight it. Yeah. Some of the media efforts that we're involved in right now. This is the website that we developed. It still has some refinements to go through, but it's got the basic concept here. So, of course, we've got the shared values right up front and the location. We will have our initiative champions listed right on the homepage. We do have a community profile with our key industries that we're targeting and information on neighborhoods. We have workforce and training tab that talks about our workforce, our schools, the educational demographics for both the city and the county, and the partnerships that we're forming. Site readiness talks about how the sites are served. This is some basic information now, what we have currently, and this will hopefully expand at some point. Let's see. We have the incentives listed, the enterprise zone, gives a brief summary there, and all these will have links back to our more detailed pages on our website. And then we will have a page where we'll present updates, news, and events as the marketing initiative advances and as development occurs. And then, of course, the contact information here. So, and they can submit questions or comments at any point. Any questions about the website? Okay. And the next thing that we've been working on with the community college, very talented individuals over there. Gordon Christensen's here with the community college and his colleague there. We've been working with them to develop a promotional film about the site. And so I wanted to show you that this evening. It's about 5 minutes long, and then there's some credits at the end. So.
Putting Education to Work campaign aims to attract targeted industry by leveraging the education and training resources available at Clackamas Community College. This campaign consists of 4 core values. Number 1 is economic development. Number 2 is workforce training. Number 3 is lifelong learning, and probably most important, number 4 is quality of life.
We've been able to source employees from as north as Camas and as far south as Salem. We're close to 205. We have the small community, but we still have a lot of infrastructure. Oregon City as a community has been very helpful and proactive in helping us understand the programs that are available to us to help save on taxes and grow our business, and we've really appreciated their proactive approach.
So these are students that are really familiar with industry, and they're motivated by it and are ready to go directly into the workforce, either right after graduating from CASE or after graduating from college.
The partnership with Clackamas and local businesses is strong. We have a concierge service through our connections with business and industry that provides you with an opportunity to not only retrain or add skill to your current workforce, but provides you with the next generation of talented and skilled employees.
The workforce availability and economic environment are major pluses for the development, not to mention the wealth of opportunities for cultural and recreational adventures in the area for future employees.
Oregon City has fantastic office space at a competitive price. We really think that there are going to be more companies like ours moving here. The other thing that makes it special is really just the culture that we have here on Main Street and up on the hill. You know, Oregon City has a great history. It has a great community. You really get to know the people around here, and it makes it a good, fun place to work. We know the restaurants on each side of us. We know the owners. You get to know the folks you work with and the people in your community, and it makes it a very rewarding place to run a business and to work.
Clackamas Community College is a place where when your employees are on their lunch break or living in the community, it's a place where you can take a break and walk across and read, perhaps it's a technical manual, or you can read a book. You can be on campus in the fitness center. The college community being so close to the Beaver Creek industrial area provides your employees with more than an education, more than skill training. It's a place where you just belong as part of the community.
And the proximity to 205 and I-5, the 205 bridge, access north to Seattle. If your employees live in Oregon City, they have access to the ocean, they have access to the mountains, they have access to all the natural resource and outdoor activities that Clackamas County provides. And with the close proximity to Portland, you can be downtown Portland in less than 10 minutes.
There's been so much change in Oregon City. I mean, you're seeing a city that has wonderful bones and wonderful history really come back to life. You know, looking forward, seeing what we're going to do with the Blue Heron site, just seeing the way that the local business owners and the building owners and the city have been able to come together and turn this into a really vibrant community has been exciting, and I can't wait to see what's next.
The upcoming design and construction of the Willamette Falls Legacy Project will allow unparalleled public access to the second largest waterfall by volume in the United States.
We strategically placed ourselves here so that we could access high talented individuals for our workforce. We also use Clackamas Community College as a training source for our staff internally.
Another thing that Super Genius has done is to make sure that we're investing back in the community where we work. And that's why our relationships with Clackamas Community College and Oregon City and Clackamas County are so important.
For more information about this campaign or information on these sites, please visit the Oregon City website, oregoncity.org/economic development, or contact the Oregon City Economic Development Manager.
The address is wrong.
There are a couple of tweaks that we need to make.
I might also suggest that
The only way you can get to downtown Portland in less than 10 minutes is if you ride with me.
That was the other one.
or Betty.
So these are some of
Good
the
morning.
folks that put the video together. So. And we really appreciate all their work that they did with us. So. They did a great job. Yes, thank you very much.
All right, good
Great.
job, guys, thanks.
Good. So the only suggestion I had is when the principal case is on there, that if you spell out Clackamas Academy of Industrial Sciences rather than case, because if somebody's not from here, they wouldn't have a clue what that
I've already gotten
acronym
that question a couple of times. Yeah.
And get the new principal.
Yeah.
In
He's fine.
addition, I think it's strange that the high school is not labeled on any of those maps or any reference to the high school.
That's a good point.
That's a big missing piece.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for that feedback.
Eric,
Much appreciated.
how big is the Beaver Creek concept plan area? You got 86 acres for here, but how big is the whole concept plan?
The concept plan. You want to speak to that piece? Are you talking about the employment area or the
No,
Beaver
just
Creek
our
Road?
Beaver Creek concept plan we have. How big is that? How many
I
acres?
think that, going off the top of my head, it's been a little while. I think the total acreage on the east side of Beaver Creek Road is like 425
Yeah.
acres, and then about 140
On the other
North
side.
Employment Campus, I believe.
So yeah, I mean it's going to be huge development out there when it's all built out. But we're focusing on this area now because it's already in the city and it's not impacted by the
appreciate that we
appeals.
didn't go after 400 acres and we just got it. We're doing something
Right.
that's manageable, I think, here. So.
Right, we're trying to get something going out here, and
Okay.
really the catalyst is this industrial technical center too to get moving on that. So this is just a quick review of our timeline. So where we've been and where we're going. We had our second stakeholder workshop at the beginning of last month, which brought out those big ideas, and we're able to move forward now, I think, with some pretty good information and feedback from the community. What's great about that is doing this stakeholder engagement is that it is it creates buy-in in the community where people have shared visions for the development out there, and you don't have individuals wanting certain projects. So you've got a shared vision going in of what they'd like to see. And the upcoming winter season, we're going back to Oregon City Business Alliance to do kind of the workshop 2 revisit. And then in spring next year, we'll be creating a Blue Ribbon Committee, group of influential folks who can move this forward. And then we'll be kicking off the official marketing campaign, which is aligned with the groundbreaking for the Industrial Technical Center. Moving forward successfully, we realize that partnerships are crucial to our success in this. And that's why we're here tonight, is to ask for your partnership in this initiative to move it forward. We're seeking partnerships primarily with government bodies that will have a strong impact, state representatives, private employers, property owners, and actually the community as a whole. Partnerships will help us in several ways through garnering additional support for the effort. It will help us open channels of communication that assist and convey the importance of our message. It will provide a greater measure of accountability in our effort. And it will validate our efforts to the business community and the development community as well. It will help us attract a variety of industry and diversified employment. It will help us to promote and advocate for business recruitment, living wage jobs, and workforce training for Oregon City. So that's it. And if the commission decides that they want to partner with us, if there's a consensus built around that, then what we'll do is we'll draft a resolution and bring it back to the November 2nd meeting for official approval. So any questions?
Just seems to me that you're missing one critical component, and that would be the building trade unions. I think you ought to reach out to the Columbia Pacific Building Trades Council and include them in that work.
Okay, that's a very good point. Thank you. Anything else?
Nope, doesn't look like it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Next up, 15569, proposed amendment to the Oregon City Municipal Code, Chapter 1216, to include a new section 12.16.070, park exclusions. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr.
Getting
Mayor.
right to work here.
Yeah, definitely.
First thing you get to do is this, huh?
So before you have a request for direction for park exclusion notification. This has been a process working with community services staff, police staff, the courts, as well as the city attorney to coordinate our efforts in recognizing repeat offenders in our park system and to help to maintain a usable park space for everyone in our community. Gives us an extra tool in our tool belt in order to make sure that we're maintaining our parks as a safe and accessible location for families to play and for everyone to recreate. So in front of you, we have a suggested ordinance. This was brought before the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee and was recommended by motion on September 22nd. The parks exclusion ordinance information was done in coordination with looking at other jurisdictions, tools that they have used in maintaining safe and open parks for all community members. So for purposes of the section, as you'll see in the attachment, it is in relation to Oregon City Municipal Code, city ordinances, rules and regulations by the city manager, as well as criminal traffic laws, state of Oregon, any law regarding controlled substances, alcoholic beverages, and applicable means relating to the person's conduct in the park. So we are dealing with what is happening in the park system, not groups of individuals, but what police officers are actually seeing, parks employees are actually seeing out in the parks as they go about doing their work during the day. The officer, and this is something that will be done by officers only, not by Parks and Recreation staff. The officer has the opportunity to approach an individual and give them a warning and give them a reasonable amount of time to stop doing the activity which is causing the officer to approach the individual. And if they stop that act for which they are doing, no park exclusion will be given to that individual on that day. But if they decide to continue, or if it is an offense that is more serious in nature, they will then have the opportunity to issue an exclusion to that individual for some offense up to 30 days. If they have a continued offense of something similar in nature, they have a 90-day exclusion, and then up to a 180-day exclusion if they continue to have similar offenses within our park system. You'll notice on the continued pages, we have information as it relates to controlled substances, alcoholic beverages. The individuals who are issued the park exclusion notification have the opportunity to appeal, and there is a process by which they will be, if appealed appropriately within 10 days, have the opportunity to continue to use the park system until a determination can be made whether or not the exclusion was done appropriately. And they also have the opportunity to continue to receive subsequent exclusions if they continue to use the parks in a manner of which is not within the laws or regulations of this community. At that, I will ask if there's any questions after reading through the packet. I, again, came into this about a week ago, so I am very thankful that we have Bill here and Chief Band to help out in answering questions if you have any that I might not be able to answer.
What are the park hours now?
Park hours are 5 a.m. till 10 p.m.
So if anyone's in the park not during those times, they would be potentially given
asked to leave, correct.
Mayor Holliday, maybe we can get some input from Chief Band here, since he's going to be pretty involved with this.
Chief, anything specific? I've got something to say. I just so I think there's this is geared at behavior. This isn't geared specifically at people, but it is geared towards some specific problems that have come up. I think that this is very, it's very soft. You know, there's warning, there's 30 days, there's 60 days, or 90 and 180 days, and it's geared toward compliance. It's not geared toward kicking people out of parks. So that's our hope, is that some of the stuff that the parks people have been seeing and having to clean up, which have been very aggravating for them, and then for our officers as well. You know, the parks are a place that should be welcome for everybody to go to, and really what we're trying to get at is behaviors that make people not want to go to the park. So it's pretty encompassing. You can see from what's on there. We did have some discussion with the judge as well, with the prosecutor, and we kind of decided that not even having code enforcement people do this, but having specifically officers. Only one kind of little question or thought was, what's the definition of a park? Because that has come up here so much, so I don't know if that's something that we clarify to the point where somebody goes,
I think we're almost there, right?
Correct.
So we're going to have a list of actual parks that are recognized through an ordinance by the city commission. Those will be our parks.
Yeah. And we could put that on whatever this piece of paper is, just for clarity for somebody. They're going to be handed a warning,
and that's currently tentatively on the November work session.
Okay.
Why would other city property be different from what we require in a park?
I think I'd go back to, what we're actually talking about is violation of city regulations and ordinances and state laws. This, as Chief Band said, is about exclusion and controlling activity in those parks. To the extent somebody is doing something that's contrary to law, the same rules still apply, that you can arrest them, you can fine them, you can take other actions. The difference is that's criminal law, it's penal, you're being punished, and possible jail, possible fine. This is considered civil, and it's not a punishment, as Chief Band said. It's a attempt to deal with certain activities. It certainly could be expanded. There is a provision currently going on for the library that allows for exclusions. We also have a public property. I believe Commissioner Ide is familiar with. We had some issues with some people at City Hall. And so there are provisions to deal with some of this in other city property, but this was sort of geared specifically to parks because of some activity that had been going on recently.
Well, I guess, so the definition of parks is one we've had conversations about, but I guess in Oregon City, we have so many variations. The cemetery is a park, the museum's a park. We have museums that sit in city parks. We have buildings that sit partially in city parks. We have houses that sit in city parks. So it's very, very. How are we able to explain it in a consistent way that even we understand or the citizens understand? I guess is the question. And I don't know that we know how.
I think one thing that is so in some of these conversations, like Mr. Kvaisman just mentioned, there's the line of, because we did have this conversation about, okay, if somebody gets kicked out of the park, should they be coming to City Hall? Should they be at the senior center?
Right.
Some of the differences are there are certain things that whoever you are, you have, people have business to do at City Hall or the police department, and we've had issues at the Pioneer Center too.
Right.
And I think this tool is really good for what we're for its application in the parks. I think that for now, our current process for problems at City Hall, problems at the police department, problems at other places, we kind of take those on a case-by-case basis because they're pretty unique, and I think it's probably the safest, and those always involve, emails with all of us, with Mr. Kvaisman, making sure that we're walking the right line. Mm-hmm. And so I think this keeps us in a pretty safe place in that respect, if that helps out at all. It's not going to fix everything, but it's going to fix the squeakiest wheel in this city right now. One of them.
So, Chief, you've kind of done a little inventory of who these individuals are and can't be, probably, because I think that's what you've been doing.
Yes.
And so you're going to be able to track this even better now, probably, who these individuals are, because that's going to help our homeless situation that we have going on. So,
well, one thing. So this is not geared toward homeless people, but it is geared toward behaviors, some of which have come up because of some homeless people. Mm-hmm. And so, as part of that conversation, you know, as we've gone through this education about a continuing education about the homeless population, there is, to say homeless person does not, it's very broad. And so there are, you know, we had a meeting with at the Father's Heart. I met the other day some of their, they have a, what is the name of their team? The community care team or something. And it is literally, there were half a dozen homeless people who are wearing shirts and they're going out and cleaning up every Tuesday. And to have a conversation with them, they are the first to tell you that there's the spectrum of people who, they're homeless people who say those people give us a bad name. So I think what is good about this is for people on, you know, for I would say a minority of a population. There are other people who are gonna, you know, there are other people who this can apply to in parks. But for a lot of people, going to jail is not that big of a deal. And it doesn't really help us solve a whole lot of problems by throwing cuffs on people and taking them to jail. If they like going to the park, and if it's a place that they like hanging out, and they know that even when you get out of jail in 3 hours, you're not going to be able to go hang out at the place you like to hang out, this might have more impact than jail would, believe it or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, actually.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
So I've got a couple things. So is the exclusion for all parks or just the park where the offense was discovered?
As it's written, it's for all parks.
Okay. And is part of the hope that this has a marked decrease in vandalism? Is that one of the drivers behind this? Okay. It'd be helpful to have a map of the parks as well as just a list of the parks so that when people are being cited, they know what is off limits. How will you prove that there's a violation? I mean, you can't be patrolling the parks all the time. How will you find offenders, and how will you prove that they have offended?
Well, that is not, that's pretty simple to do. Generally, it could be a police report. We don't just take criminal reports. Sometimes they're informational. You know, some of these are crimes. If somebody assaults somebody in a park or something like that, we're taking a police report anyways. And so evidence of this would be just inherently in that report. But there could also be times where, you know, we had told that person they can't drink here. We came back a second on this date. They were drinking. They write an informational report saying on this date and time after these. And then it would go before the judge if they were going to try and argue that it did not exist. And I think actually they can go to Tony first.
So it's primarily the burden. So let's say I'm a citizen and I see someone violating some of these rules, and I take a picture with my cell phone and email it to you. Would that be sufficient evidence for you to have an exclusion on this person, or is it primarily just the police that is doing the enforcement on this?
It's the police action. We're the ones who are actually doing it. But yes, somebody could report and send that photo and say.
The police officer would have to issue the exclusion. What the police officer would rely on to issue that exclusion, obviously if that officer saw the activity, that's one thing. If you got what he considered a reliable report, I think that may well be, and I'm slipping a little bit into Chief Band's territory, but one thing that could be interesting, and it may be more interesting to the lawyers who watch too much Law and Order, is that, again, this is civil, not criminal, so you could actually have a situation where you have enough evidence to have them excluded, because all you have to do is show that the violation happened by preponderance of the evidence, sort of 51%, whereas for a criminal charge, you'd have to show beyond a reasonable doubt. And so it could be that someone actually is excluded and found that they committed the violation, but is not found guilty of the crime because there isn't sufficient evidence to convince a judge or jury of the crime itself. So, you know, your question actually is a really interesting one that is going to work. You know, a lot of cities have worked it out, but it typically is the officer. In most cases, you have a problem individual that is identified, and the officer comes to deal with it, and that's you know, my guess is 90 to 95% of the cases are going to happen in that way.
So I guess I was thinking of it from a citizen point of view.
Right.
Let's say I'm a neighbor and I see this suspicious activity, same person, I take some pictures, I call the police, they handle it.
Yeah, they would have to issue the exclusion. You couldn't go to the court and apply for an exclusion yourself.
Okay. Let's see. So this kind of crosses into the homeless realm, but one of the things that I've heard is that it'd be nice to have restrooms that they could use at night. Well, most of the restrooms that are available to the public are in the parks. So, but you can't use the park because it's closed from 10 until 5.
And
So-
then the question is, what else happens in the restroom if you leave them open after 10 o'clock at night? Besides just using the restroom.
One other issue with that is you know, that the generally, if we're away from this and we're just speaking about the homeless population, they do not. There are a lot of them I know that are in the area of the Cove and the peninsula down there. So if there's you know, where do you put the restroom? And is somebody going to go from there? Are they going to walk? You know, likewise, there are people who at times live on the promenade. There's people living up on top of the hill. So one bathroom is not, you know, and then like the mayor said, so this is why a lot of cities are really struggling with what do you do?
And the result of no bathrooms is a mess.
Right.
So.
You know, it's a difficult issue, but you know, I think what the chief said is really, at the end of the day, this isn't going to solve all the problems, but hopefully it allows us to solve some of the problems, and you know, it in some ways protects some of the more vulnerable homeless population.
Commissioner Ide?
I have a million thoughts, so I sound scattered. But I guess one of the things that I like is that it says that it applies to all users in parks. So, you know, if there was a neighborhood picnic and all the neighbors were in there and there was an issue, that that issue would be brought to their attention and they would be given a warning. In the same way, if I took my family to the park for a birthday party, or you know, so I mean it's all users of parks. I like that, not just transients or homeless folks. And then I like it that it says that it's in the first paragraph, I think. That it may, the officer may exclude any person who violates the code. So this gives the officer some discretion following the offense, and whether they give a warning and then you know the behavior is modified and they're sorry and you know they've changed things and they go on. I guess my only thought there is just the concern for the officer who has to make a judgment call. You know, I wouldn't want to be in that officer's shoes to make a judgment call on one person and have it be different for another. But yet, maybe you're in the business of doing that all the time,
yes.
and you're used to that. But you know, you know what I'm saying?
That happens. That literally, you answered the question. That literally is what they do every day, all day. One thing that this problem is kind of interesting. I was surprised at one point. I was talking to an officer, which led to another one, and I've been off the street for a few years, and to hear them talk about what the homeless issue is very stressful to them. It's very there's no finding a resolution is not, because a lot of times the resolution is not, they're not fixing anything. And same thing with, I think, as we have these discussions about what this city's response. I know we've had numerous discussions separately, and I know this is going to be a topic in the future. That the staff, you know, it's something it was kind of lost on me how much frustration there was, just trying to fix these problems. Same thing with the parks people. I've never seen them so frustrated about something. And I've never heard them in any judgmental sense about the population. It's more just, you know, literally look at what we're cleaning up here. the good thing about this is, I think one of the ways to combat some of that is give them a tool, give them something that they can do, and if nothing else, usually there's certain things like drinking in public. That is, there are certain things that that people kind of got to beg to get arrested for drinking in public generally. You know, a cop's not going to walk up, see a guy with a Budweiser and go, oh, you're going to jail. It is always, you want to pour that out, you want to get out of here. It's, people kind of skyline themselves a little bit. And I think this is going to be the same sort of thing. This is going to be something they're not running out there trying to use. This is people who kind of give us no option but to go, well, I guess we're kicking you out of the park because we've tried everything else.
I think it's important. I think, like Jim said, this isn't about criminalizing homelessness. This is about changing a behavior in our parks. It's not illegal to be homeless. I just want to be very clear about that. But the behavior that's going on in certain incidents is an intimidation to users. It's a safety hazard for our employees and our officers. It is a continued maintenance. The way some of our infrastructure is being treated, vandalized, destroyed, is becoming a reoccurring theme that cannot continue to go on. So this is about changing behavior. And if folks, want to abide by the rules of the park, we're going to continue to have those discussions. But this is to address the immediate issue that we're facing as a community, as staff, as Parks and Rec employees, as police officers. So this is hopefully a tool that we can implement successfully.
Just in addition to that, at the League of Oregon Cities conference a couple weeks ago, there was a workshop on homelessness, and one of the presenters was an officer in the Salem Police Department, and he and 3 others had been assigned to be on bikes and go around Salem, and they put this exclusion into place, and he said that it was very helpful to them as far as
changing behavior.
Because that was part of their motivation too. They just needed to stop what was happening, and there was a lot of respect for the law among the folks there. So that's just a comment that they said, and
I think what Tony said bears repeating, that homelessness isn't a crime, and the frustration from park staff and from, I think, the police officers is it's sort of, there's nobody else taking care of a lot of these issues, and it falls down, and that's where the officers at the end of the day are not the ones who should be dealing with a lot of these issues or other things, but at the same time it has impacts to city infrastructure and other things, and we've got to be able to deal with that without without causing other problems, and this is just one more tool in the toolbox that hopefully will help us address it.
And perhaps another tool in the toolbox, and that might be just something completely unrelated to what we're talking about, but is having a list of options for these folks if they have issues that, it's not the officer's job to fix the problem, but what options or what services are available to offer to them in case, they need some help. But that's for another discussion, I think.
Is that it?
Oh.
Anybody else?
I did want to say that I had the opportunity to go on a ride along with a police officer, and then also, as Nancy did, met with them. And this exclusion idea was something that they really wanted, and a tool that they felt would be really helpful for them in dealing with some of these problems. So I think it's great that Phil has brought this forward, and I think it'll be really helpful.
Okay, I think you have direction.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks, Phil.
So, moving on. 16-567, proposed ordinance to ban the use of tobacco in Oregon City public parks. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. So this came about from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. They brought forth a discussion of banning smoking in our park system, and it has evolved into a process of determining smoking tobacco products and similar devices. At the June 30th Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, they made a motion to move forward this proposal to the City Commission, and staff is looking for direction from Commission on the proposed ordinance, which is included in your packet. The ordinance makes adjustments to the municipal code for use of tobacco in any public park. And reading through number 11, it says, use tobacco in any public park. To use tobacco shall mean possession of any lighted pipe, cigar, the use of an electric cigarette or similar device intended to emulate smoking, which permits a person to inhale vapors, mist, may include nicotine, lighted cigarette of any kind. Would also include pipe, cigar, not limited to tobacco products or cannabis products, but also to any other weeds or plants capable of being smoked. In addition, to use tobacco shall mean to ingest or place within the mouth or nose any type of tobacco product, including chewing tobacco, snuff, or dip. And with that, I will open for any questions or clarification.
Okay, normally, I let the other commissioners.
Here we go.
But I see this as a solution in search of a problem. I think it goes way overboard. If we're talking about somebody bothering somebody else with their tobacco use and their chewing or they're using snuff, that doesn't interfere with anybody else's right. I mean, you could do that right next door to somebody and they wouldn't even know it. As everyone knows, I'm a smoker. And I do my very best to be a considerate smoker. I don't, go into the middle of a crowd and, I step away from, if we're at an event, I'll step away around the corner or something. And I think most smokers are polite that way. And I don't see that this as, I've been to city parks all over the place, and I just don't see this as being a problem. And I don't think it's our purpose at the city to legislate morality. And I think that's what this is aimed at, is trying to, tell people that smoking's bad. We all know it's bad, okay? Get it. But it is still a legal product in the United States. So that's where I'm at.
Okay.
Well, I'll step
Commissioner
in.
Hyde?
Oh, good.
I'm kind of on the same page as you. In fact, I was so much on that page that I thought, well, I wonder what other cities are doing. And so I, went to Google and I looked up and I found this list that was just updated like October 2016. Oh, I forgot to write down where I came from. Anyway, it was all the cities in the country that have this same type of ordinance in parks. And so there were 1,292 cities in the country, 14 pages of cities that had it. So that, and in the Portland area, in Oregon, there were 17 cities that had approved such an ordinance. So, it's not like it's something that only Oregon City is thinking of doing, but I just wanted to find that information just for my own self. It is happening out there, but I felt too that it was a bit of a violation of people's rights, especially, they're outside, they're in, isolated areas where it's not like they're standing on the playground, but the Parks and Recreation Committee looked at it 3 different times, I think, and talked about it and brought it forward, and so I had, that to consider too. So those are just comments at this point.
As my mom is fond of saying, if everybody else is jumping off the bridge, does that mean it's okay for you too?
I'm just making comments.
I know.
And I will add, in addition to that, City of Portland just passed similar ordinance. Oregon State Parks has similar ordinance. Many other local jurisdictions have no smoking, particularly around parks, families, playgrounds, children utilizing the park system, secondhand smoke. We also deal with debris as it relates to smoking in the park system, which is an impact on park staff and volunteers, because picking up little pieces of litter does take some time.
Oh, Commissioner Megawork, sorry, you can see it.
So, since you mentioned that the Parks Board has talked about this 3 times, what kinds of public testimony did they receive regarding this proposal?
That is an excellent question, and I do not have the answer to that. I apologize.
Commissioner Shaw?
Well, you know, I'm always thinking about the kids and the example that we should be setting. And I guess that's where I kind of come from, is that as people are in the parks smoking and there's kids playing in the park, is that something that we want to moderate a little bit? So I understand people's rights, and you can kind of be an exemption, Mayor Holliday, because you are very, you know, you do go around and just get out of the way and stuff, but I have been in parks here lately where that hasn't been the case. So again, we have to kind of look at protection a little bit of the folks, of our younger folks here, from that small percentage of folks that don't care, unfortunately. You know, so, and on the other side too, it is kind of a nuisance to the non-smoker. You're an exception, you know, you do go out of your way to, when you do that, so, but that's, unfortunately lately that I've been in parks where I've actually seen this, so that's my thoughts on it. Mr. Schmidt.
I don't want to say anything.
Okay.
Right.
I'm fine with that. Oh, you don't want to say anything, but
I will say something when we just actually go and talk about this and hear from the public. But
what are we paying
I don't
you
need
for?
to do it tonight. I'm reading all the other park regulations though, and is alcohol in some other section?
Isn't it the same as the exclusion?
'Cause I don't see anything written in there.
It is illegal to drink. I'm not sure where it is, but it is.
It's not in
drinking in a
those
park is
regulations
not
that are here,
legal.
though.
I don't think it's
I know
there.
it's on our signage, I think, in the parks, but I don't see it here in this.
I think it's actually in the
separate-
offenses generally in chapter 8 instead of
In a separate-
the parks.
Okay. Okay.
So
Mr. Hyde.
if someone was, if this went into place and someone was smoking in a park, and what would you do about it? Does the same thing as the exclusion ordinance that we just, what would you do? Ask them to stop?
It's-
Put it out?
It's a really good question because that's what I've been thinking about. I mean, honestly,
do you have enough to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just asking.
And
the police don't have to do that. If someone's smoking at the school, I say, put out your cigarette. You can't smoke at the school. You know, there's signage there. It's like someone running their dog in the park without a leash. Put a leash on your dog.
And
The
having
signs are at the front
worked
of the park, done.
having worked for an organization that had a no smoking policy in our
Yeah.
park systems previous to this, it is often self-enforced by other users. And you're always going to have folks that decide that they're going to do whatever they want to do. And items like this are typically directed towards those folks that if there's an option to follow the direction of the organization, they will choose to do the right thing. And you know, you're targeting that 85-90% of individuals who will choose to do the right thing, as opposed to the 10-15% that choose to do what they want to do.
So if I could ask Phil, how was that in the Dalles, or is that Hood River?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long was it been in effect there?
Since the early aughts, 03, 04, something to that
Really?
effect. We did update our ordinance this last year while I was there, and there was no negative public feedback once we updated it to include, with the passage of marijuana laws and updated technology. But it's the enforcement piece. We did not see an undue obligation on behalf of park staff to enforce it, and often users chose to help enforce it with other users.
Interesting. Okay.
Commissioner Smith, the drinking ban is in 9.12.010.
Okay. So we'll move on to 3D, residential membrane accessory structures.
Thank you,
So-
Mary.
I think he's looking for, like, what are they supposed to do?
I think they got a fairly clear idea from you guys.
No, I heard
bring-
mixed
we'll
reaction.
bring it
I didn't
back
hear
for
clear
public
direction at all.
comment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Before we do this, can we take like 3 minutes?
Cookies?
Or if Rock.
Mainly residential properties that are not a home. So it could be carports, it could be garages or wood sheds or whatever the thing is. We received a fair number of complaints in June of this year about membrane structures, which is a really specific thing. That is accessory structures that are made of metal or fabric. And in response to that code enforcement complaint, we started a community conversation at the City Commission to figure out what are our regulations and is that the right thing that we want to do for our community. And so from the last couple of meetings, we've gone through those code enforcement violations and realized, most of these buildings, they're not just the wrong material, they might be also in the wrong spot, or there's other things going on. So tonight we're going to talk about the spectrum of accessory buildings, and which will include membrane structures. And from this work session tonight, I'm hoping to get guidance from the commission on two things. I'm going to go over a quick rundown of the applicable standards for the planning division as they apply to accessory structures, and then I'll be looking to you to provide direction on if we want to change our code now, change our code later, or think about it when we do change our code later, or do nothing and continue to implement our current codes. And then we'll run through just quickly our code enforcement cases and some outstanding code enforcement cases related to the membrane structures from June. There's a whole other realm of code enforcement and accessory building cases that are going on that we're not talking about tonight. And then I'll be looking to you for your direction. At the moment, in response to all of those violations in June, we placed code enforcement on pause until we could think about it. And then, so the commission would then tell us to wait with code enforcement until we change whatever standards we want to change, or just proceed as we have been. So our role as a city is to review these types of structures, and the planning division, and again, is what I'm going to talk about tonight. There's other departments involved. The building division looks at the stability of the structure and other items such as that. Development Services Department or Public Works make sure that those structures aren't over easements or utility lines and things. Our role at the planning division is to review the structure for various compliance with standards in our code. And when we adopt codes, they go through large city processes. They always go by the Planning Commission and the City Commission, and there's always a large public involvement component to that. And so as staff, we are paid to implement the rules that are in place today. So let's talk about those a little bit. So I'm talking about just accessory building code standards. We also regulate them to make sure that they're not harming any streams or slopes or anything like that. Historic and environmental protection, we still do that, but we'll kind of place that aside for the moment. So one of the things we look at is the location. So again, just repeating what our current code is. They can't be in front of a house. They could be next to a house and behind a house. We also look at the location in relationship to property lines or setback. They all have to be set back somehow. Normally the setback is big, but if you do certain things like have a shorter structure, then you can snug up to the property lines within 3 feet. So as the minimum, the closest you can get to your neighbor is 3 feet. We also look at the size of the structures. Some are big and some are small. Most properties can have structures up to 600 square feet. You can have multiple structures, but the size of any one structure is 600. If you have a large lot, which means a lot over 20,000 square feet, then you can get an 800 square foot structure. We regulate the height of those structures. So they could be really tall. They could be 35 feet tall, which is the height a house could be. But most people want to snug up to those property lines, and in order to do that, one of the requirements is that you're no taller than 14 feet. And that's measured in a very specific location that the arrows are showing, which is halfway between the peak and the eave of the roof. So the premise is we have setbacks to allow light and air between properties. And if you're going to impede in those setbacks and get closer to your neighbor, you're going to come down in height and be shorter. You're not going to be 35 feet, 3 feet off the property line, but maybe 14 is okay. We regulate lot coverage. So that means how much of your property you can cover with a structure. There's some exceptions that are listed on the screen, but depending on which zoning designation you're in, you could cover 40 to 55% of your lot with the building. And we also have design standards for the home. So to mitigate having a garage on site, we want to look at the design of the front of the home itself to make sure that it's designed in a way in which create attractive spaces that improve public safety by having eyes on the street, create places where neighbors can interact and so forth. And then lastly, our material standards, which you guys are very familiar with at this point. Structures 200 square feet and more cannot be a membrane structure. That's always been the case. It has to be the same as a home or a compatible similar type building material. Structures under 200 square feet you used to be able to do membrane structures, and then in 2011 we changed that so that you could no longer. Here's some examples of membrane structures that we've talked about. One thing to remember, so we mainly talk about fabric or metal, but when we talk about metal, there's a picture of a shipping cargo container. That is a metal membrane structure too. So when you're thinking about giving direction, if we do want to change any parts of our code, just sort of those little nuances are important to us. So the three options before you are to do nothing, or to look at this section of the code when we do code amendments, or to amend the code for this section now. I do have to give my little disclaimer that we don't have any money in the budget, and at the moment we have one planner, one assistant planner, and we're getting a second planner soon, but they're processing all our other applications and LUBA courts and appeals and things like that. So that being aside, what would you like to do? Regardless of whatever you decide, we can continue to have these community conversations or come back to them. We recommend that we keep the public involved since they were involved when we created this code. It's okay to change code throughout the years. It's not meant to stay forever, but as long as we sort of loop back in whatever those community standards are. So what shall I do?
When would you normally amend the code? I assume you do it on a periodic basis.
So we did apply for that housing grant, which would allow us to pay for amendments of code. If we don't get it, we'll still want to kind of look at forecasting into our next budget as we move forward with forecasts for the next budget cycle, amending our code as well. So it should be coming within the next couple years, hopefully, if we can get the associated funding with it. But it's a big task. In the last meeting or the one before that, we sort of talked about anyone can apply for an amendment to the code. You can direct staff to do it, the public could do it, anyone could do it. But depending on exactly what you're amending, there's a cost, and the cost can be high. It could be about $10,000 for us to submit a legislative application and to send a postcard to everybody in the city saying, hey, we're going to change something. Because there's so many addresses. It's actually the city and the urban growth boundary. So that's one piece sort of floating out there. We do have a log of the issues that we want to take a look at when we amend our code next, and whether we just take a slice of a couple chapters or look at all of the issues all at once. We'll have to see what our staffing is at that time, but we do keep a log of things to look at.
And when was the last time you amended the code?
We amended our code last with in a bigger way. We did it with the transportation system plan in 2014. We did it in 2010, 2009, 2008. So we had a bit where we did it fairly often, and then after we made all of these changes, we wanted to go back 6 months or a year later and make sure we did the right thing by checking back on it. And so when we looked back again, we made some more amendments. So there was a while where we did quite a few.
So I see I understand your point about, staff time, finances, all that sort of thing. Yet we still have this problem hanging out here that we're going to have to resolve at some point. It seems to me that probably the biggest issue we have is the fact that when the Planning Commission and the City Commission did this, they didn't put in a grandfather type clause to allow the folks that had built this and done, whatever, to allow them to keep those. Now, it seems to me we're down to, out of the list that you have here of 18 or 17,
yeah,
there's only 7 of those left that are pre-2011.
So, right. So 7 of the 17 were built after our regulations went in place. So the rest of them, the 10, were
right
before. So if you didn't want to send that postcard to every member of or within the urban growth boundary, you could make a code adjustment that changes that section of the code to allow someone who was grandfathered in. But it would be your choice if you want to do that public notification piece or not, but you're not legally required to notify all the property owners if you make that decision, because you're allowing someone to do something that they can't do now. If you restrict things that they can do,
Right.
you have to notify them, but the other way around.
So how tall is that cliff I'm about to walk off of, Mr. Weisman?
I think the other part of this, though, is that even if we grandfathered some of these in, they were still constructed. There were other parts of the code where they were illegal. Is that correct?
That is correct. So, there were, of the 17 that we're down to, so there were 47, and most of them were easy. If they were easy, they were either removed or they did something to make them comply. Of the ones left, 14 don't comply with our setbacks, so that would be a problem. They could shimmy it over in some cases. In some cases, it's a little bit harder to do that. 13 of them don't meet the separation requirements, so in order to snug up to 3 feet within the property lines, you have to be separated from your house by 3 feet. A lot of these properties have a physical limitation that they only have this much space, and so they don't have...
What's the purpose of having to be separated from your house by 3 feet?
When you have buildings stacked up like that and it goes straight to the property line, it just is a big mass. So if you're going to snug up to the property line, if you were a neighbor, you would think, why is that house touching the property line when I have to keep a setback? So there's separation when you're allowed to be within the side yard setback. So side yard setbacks can be up to 10 feet. So if you maintain that 10-foot setback, you don't have to have that separation. There is some fire issues, but you can go through some things to mitigate the fire issues. If you want to get close to your property line, it's just one of the things where we're going to allow a little bit of space here to get narrowed down between you and your neighbors, but on the other side of the structure, you have to keep some space there too. So you're not just jamming up a bunch of structures near the property line. So whatever you choose to do with the code, it's clear that with the structures still in violation, it's more than just the material. It's material, setbacks, sometimes height, because they're the really tall metal ones that RVs go, and sometimes those are more than 14 feet in height, and there's just no place to put them. If it was easy to move them at this point, a lot of them would have been moved. So it's a tricky one. I don't envy you. It's a tough policy decision. So as a city, we have the right to choose kind of what we want our setbacks to be and design materials to be, and if we want to change that standard for grandfathering or not.
Ask a question?
Yes, please do.
This might be for Bill. So is it possible to pass a resolution stating that it was the City Commission's intent to review this section of the code at a later date, and then in the meantime, grandfathering isn't the word, but whatever the right word is there, to either grandfather or whatever, all of the current violators in until such a time as the code is looked at?
Retroactively authorize them? I think you could probably get there. When we talk about grandfather, almost always we're talking about one that was legally established, and that's the issue that planning staff is struggling with. If it wasn't allowed at the time, typically they don't get grandfathered in. Could you retroactively make them the ones that actually acted and built, even though they weren't in compliance with the code, and make them legit in some way? I think so. There's the equity side of it. I'm thinking of the other, 40-some people who might have removed their structure.
Heard about that too.
I don't know as if there's a legal problem, but that doesn't mean you're not going to have an issue with it.
We have had over the years pushback on setbacks and other things, material standards. So you have had a lot of people who just never ended up in code enforcement because they chose to comply with whatever the rules are. As far as code enforcement goes, there have been a fair number of violations. This is just violations for membrane structures. If we were to include setbacks and heights and all of that, the number would skyrocket. We have ended up in court 5 times for just membrane structures, and those people were forced to remove their structure between 2011 and now. So we've been through this code enforcement and court system.
So, how many are still out of compliance here?
Well,
it's a moving target. Of the ones that came in June, so we had 47 violations, 17 are left.
But that's only what have been reported, so we have no idea in the city
And
how many.
There's more since June.
Yeah.
And there's been,
well, the one example on Cherry was, rather egregious.
Just came out to the sidewalk as well.
Yeah, that's not on this list because it was after June. Yeah.
So there's no way to bring. If they're out of compliance, they're out of compliance, and they should be taken care of, right? They should be allowed that opportunity or get them removed.
Yeah, so we had we received a bunch of violations or complaints. With this type of thing, we're not that proactive because we don't have that capacity. So we sort of generally work off complaints. We almost exclusively work off complaints. And we received complaints. We sent everyone a letter that says, here's what our regulations are, and you're out of compliance. Please come talk to us within 10 days. And then they come and talk to us, and we try and look up their property and see if there are things that they could do to come into compliance. We explain the regulations, and then we give them a time period in which to comply. And it sort of varies. It's at least 30 days, but so that's where we are now. And then so that's been a while since that happened, and then we were directed to pause on code enforcement until we get more direction. Because I think the outstanding question is, are we intending to change our code in order to allow these structures to remain? And if so, we're not going to proceed with code enforcement. So we sent out another letter to all those people in code enforcement to say, City Commission is reviewing this topic, and we'll keep you posted what happens. But we're not pursuing actively code enforcement. We are tracking you, but you are on pause at the moment.
So what'd they do in the Dalles, Phil? I'm searching here.
Well, this sort of makes my head explode because, on the one hand, had we done this reasonably the first time, then we wouldn't be sitting here having to make this decision. Number two, I think, is just as important, is that most people would not. I don't think a reasonable person would make the assumption that you're building anything when you put one of these things together. That it's a it's sort of a kit. I don't know. I think we need to take. I think we need to take a look at the whole thing. Whether we can do that in a timely fashion, it doesn't seem like we can. On the other hand, I think that those people that had those things up prior to 2011 should be allowed to keep them.
As long as they're in compliance with
But how do we
everything
know
else.
that?
What?
Whether they were there before.
We have aerial photos.
We have those
There's aerial
photographs and
photos.
stuff,
There's way
but
to.
But
that means going through every
which we've done. It's
property
in there. But some of them may have to.
Well, only for the
ones that come in for
ones that
complaints.
came in. I mean, we need to really do that for the whole city, basically.
We could look at them as they come in. We do that with a lot of code enforcement to see if it's legally non-conforming. But with this issue, they may have to move around on the property in order to comply with things like setbacks or height restrictions.
So the frustration that we all have right now is not really specific to just the commission that made this decision, because we made the same decisions for murals, we made the same decisions for sign code, because these are the same types of things. How do we deal with all these variations of various things? And there is no simple answer.
Well, of course not.
And I think so many of these have to be continually revisited, because I think we screwed up on the sign code, and I think we screwed up on the murals, and I think we've done the same thing that we did here multiple times. So I don't know.
I don't disagree with you.
To me, the height restrictions and the setbacks make sense. They seem reasonable to me. As a potential neighbor of one of these things, I could live with that. So I think those portions should be enforced.
Does our code or our fee schedule include code violation fee? No. Is there anything like that? Is there any?
Well, there is a provision that says you can charge up to $300 per day per offense, and it goes to the judge.
The judge is the one who determines what violation what fee will be.
But generally speaking, that's for somebody closer to someone who is violating a red tag on a construction site, or that, is willfully saying, no, I'm not going to I'm going to continue working on my house even though you gave me a red tag and told me I can't
Right.
do it until I have a permit.
Code enforcement's aim is always to get compliance, and if people, do what they want, there's not going to be a fine. It's someone who goes, nope, I don't care what the code says. I am going to, build my house 2 feet from the property line. And, then you get into red tag and you get some other issues. But, if somebody's violating code enforcement tries to get them to comply before taking them to court.
Never heard of us charging a fine for something like an accessory structure.
Just asking.
Can I throw? So if you were going to try, and so obviously the thing from what Commissioner Ide was saying is somehow making something that kind of was a fix for people who are out of compliance. But the problem is anybody who's gone through the court process or anybody who has complied, who is out money or whatever, is there a way of splitting the baby that somehow? And you guys might throw a chair at me but I'm just trying to think of. Is there some sort of a fee or some sort of so the person who comes in and says, look, I moved mine and I had paid $1,000 for whatever, and the city said, look, we split the baby somehow, and we realize if there's this set of criteria and it's in violation. And we gave people an opportunity to pay $100, $200, $500, whatever, to come in at least they paid something that is not. You kind of follow where I'm going with this.
Yeah, that sounds like Pandora's box to me.
Yeah,
Well,
there's sort of the violation fee, and that for a variety of reasons we leave with the judge to impose. And then in terms of review fees, we're mandated by law to only charge what is average or actual cost of reviewing these.
I think what Chief Ban was getting at was someone who is non-compliant could pay $500 and then they
get to violate the law.
They buy their free pass. Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Indulgence.
But it could be with the
Just thinking out
caveat.
loud here, folks.
With the caveat that at the next time that the code is amended, that that whole section would be looked at. No promises that it's going to change, but anyway, just an addendum.
I think that I think what we struggle with as staff is that you have it's not just the membrane structure, it's the setback issue, it's the height issue, and those were in place long before we had these discussions of changing the code and making it retroactive or not. I mean, they were in violation, so that's what we're struggling with. Are we just going to allow these things for some amount of time to be in violation? What impact is that to the neighbor who has a 16-foot tall structure at the zero lot line up against their house? I mean, that's what we struggle with. And if we allow these, is there a way to contain that for some set amount of time, or not? Or do we, that's what we struggle with, is that it's not just one issue.
Well, and they've been allowed to violate now for years.
And that's not unusual with code enforcement because it is typically complaint driven. That until your neighbor or someone decides to turn you in, you can have a violation that's been there for some time.
But when does adverse possession take effect?
In terms of violating the code, it doesn't.
So if you build your fence 2 feet onto your neighbor's lot, at some point, do you not own that property?
So that's real property, which is different than violating city codes.
All right.
And
well,
87 years.
One, I don't think that I certainly don't want to give you guys direction tonight without giving the public another opportunity to talk to us about this, because maybe somebody out there is smarter than we are and has an idea that might work for everybody. So I'd rather put this on, I don't know, even if we held a special work session with just this so that we could let everybody in the, that has one of these things or is thinking about it. Part of the problem I have is the whole idea of the material too, because the ones that I've seen that are in good condition and aren't offensive, even though they're using a metal that maybe isn't the same color as the house or whatever the case is. But we talk about letting people use their property. I bet Jim's got a boat. You have a boat, Jim? No? But, you know, people have boats and RVs and other things, and, you know, we live in the Pacific Northwest where outdoor recreation, you know, is all the time, and you want to protect your stuff.
But being offensive could be subjective, though.
Well, sure it is.
You know, that's
yeah,
right.
I
Yeah,
understand. I mean,
what's offensive to you?
If this was easy, we would have done it. We would have solved it already. So I guess my suggestion would be that we have a special work session and let everybody know, and let's hear what everybody has to say one more time, and then we can give you some direction. I honestly don't have any direction for you now at this point in time, beyond other than saying, if we were to say, if you did it after 2011, absolutely, you know, you have to follow the code. Then we can have a discussion about those other 10 or whatever. And but I think the ones that were built after, you know, the code was changed in January 2011, that those, you know, what is it? What is the rule, Bill? Ignorance of the law is no excuse. So, but I do think we owe those other people that have been there for, you know, 10, 15, 20 years the opportunity to try to find a solution to their issues.
And two thoughts. One, first, you know, is there consensus around there? I'd love to hear that, because maybe we can deal with those code enforcement. But the other piece is, before we get there, is the commission thinking about changing some of those rules like setbacks and separation and other things? Because if in fact that may change such that these ones built after 2011 would be allowable, I think that would be a bad situation to say, all right, you guys built it in 2013, take it down,
Okay.
but now you can build it again.
And then us being on hold right now, what happens if one's installed tomorrow or the next day?
Well, there was one literally installed a month or so ago.
And they're going to keep.
In fact, there was another one that was installed about 3 or 4 days ago that I know of in a certain place downtown.
I don't know if a public hearing without a more thought out recommendation is going to be helpful, because we did that already.
I'm wondering if we can come back with some thoughts on the existing code, and then what I'm hearing is there a remedy for ones that were constructed that were potentially in violation of height, setback, proximity to building prior to code going into effect in 2011? What would be a remedy there?
I think that's reasonable.
I think that's good. Dan, I don't know. I think we had a pretty good hearing from the public.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we do it again. I think we're going to hear the same thing again.
I would agree with Brian.
You know, and we had pretty good turnout.
I know, but at the same time, you know, we all talk about public participation and process, and if we're going to do this, I don't have a problem sitting through another hour of folks, you know, telling us how they feel about it. I'd rather err on the side of more participation than less.
Well, let's see if
what we struggle with, though, is that we're not doing a typical public participation. We're not noticing the city. We're not noticing, you know, we have a group of folks who've been in code enforcement, which are our primary public contact. You know, we're not, I suppose we could go back and look at folks who've turned folks in and invite them. You know, I mean, to be truly public, you know, we should be inviting all sides and having public testimony. This will be on the agendas. You know, typically we don't take comment at work sessions. That's at the discretion of the commission. So maybe it's have this policy discussion, and then depending on where that comes out, you know, if we're going to change the code or adopt something, we're going to have to go through a public process, which is probably the more appropriate time.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think that's
true.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good. Everybody good?
But if we're going to be changing the code, but we're not going to be able to change it for 2 years.
We'll think about this and come back with some recommendations.
Wyatt will find the money. He's got that little pot underneath his desk. All right.
So I think our goal would be to try to address the concerns that we've heard today.
Do you feel like you've got direction, Mr. Manager?
Crystal clear.
Do you have anything to report?
I do. Library Director Cole.
Whoa.
Big day.
Big day. Big
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Good evening,
Oh,
Commissioners.
hang on one second here.
Yes.
So a little bit of, Commissioner Ide just brought up an excellent point. Our next work session is scheduled for the 8th of November. That's
Day.
Election Day.
Well, where else would you like to be?
If we need to find a way to reschedule that.
Or you just put it on the big screen.
Or cancel
Yeah,
it.
actually, I think this would be more
Or
fun.
cancel it, yeah.
Cancel it. So I don't have any pretty pictures for you today because I hope you will see it in the flesh in just a few days. But I would just wanted to let you know we were going to reopen tomorrow, and just because we got a little bit behind on things happening in the order that they're supposed to, we're not ready. So we're going to reopen on Thursday to the public. We have sent out as much public notice as we could. And I think it'll be all right. But we'll be reopening on Thursday, and then the foundation party on Friday night, and the grand opening on Saturday, and then punch list.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Everybody know what a punch list is?
Yep.
Okay.
Next, we have just wanted to we talked some about First City Watch. So it's a website that we have that talks about really focused on Oregon City Police Department and their staff and some of the officers. So there's 2 new articles that have been posted there. So hopefully folks have a chance to go visit that website, see the articles, pretty interesting ones, firearms training and about the school resource officer. So just really a great opportunity to hear about policing from a different perspective. And anything else you want to add, Chief, to that?
Is
or?
Chris pushing that out on Facebook? Because I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's put that out or not. There is something on there that you can put your email address on there, and you're supposed to get notified of new articles. My email's on there, and I was just thinking I knew about the new articles, but that there's something not working there. But
you can get it.
I got it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can get it so that if it, hook her up with Facebook so that when you post something new on the site, it'll go out on Facebook as well.
Okay. I'll do that.
And so that is firstcitywatch, all one word.com. So hopefully folks will have an opportunity to go look at that. Last, just wanted to provide an update on from the landslides that we had last December out at Newell Creek Apartments, and we did receive a FEMA reimbursement. So very excited about that. We had actual expenses of just over $118,000 in responding to the event, including Holcomb, Forest Edge, debris management, citywide emergency protective measures, historic retaining wall, and drainage channel work that was necessary. We were reimbursed for just under $92,000 of that. So I really do want to congratulate not only all the folks, all the staff who participated, came out and helped with that event, but really Martin Montalvo, operations manager for Oregon City, and Aaron Wilkie out of the finance department, just really did a great job of getting ahead of making sure we were all aware as we were flying around making decisions, trying to make improvements, to really track the costs that we were in the investment and the expenditures that we were having in responding to that event. Because of the documentation and the how well prepared they were in making sure we who were responding provided them documentation of our expenses, of our time. They were way ahead and were able to capture a lot of our expenses and able to submit a very comprehensive package to the state, to FEMA, for that reimbursement. So once again, Aaron Wilkie and Martin Montalvo just did an amazing job in helping us secure that reimbursement from FEMA of just under $92,000.
So
Eric got his money.
Close to
For Wyatt.
80% of what we spent, we got back.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I was there from day one, and both those guys did just an outstanding job of not only doing what they needed to do, but making sure that all the rest of us were doing what we needed to do. And we wouldn't have gotten that money back had it not been for them. So congratulations to both of them.
So Tony, do we know if the apartments will be reopened at some point? What's the status there?
I don't have a status at this point. We could certainly check into that. We were just talking about that again as the rains start coming here again and seeing where folks are at. And
I'd want to point out the Oso landslide up in Washington. The state and counties and others settled for approximately $60 million. So we want to be very careful about what we allow to go forward there.
I have a small update for you on that one. They have started contacting the planning and building divisions for demolition of a couple of structures, one of with some units in it and then another one with garages. So, we're working back and forth on clarification.
The garage is on the left side probably,
And
because they
then-
were toast.
Exactly, and the planning commission approved a $1 million retaining wall that went above that to protect the buildings at the Berry Hill complex. So they're working on getting that in place. So it's above the garages.
Not the units.
Really, and we,
It's a private development. It went through our planning commission for a variance, so it's a retaining wall that will keep that soil.
yeah, I know, but I would have appreciated at least the commission be let known that that was going on. Because I've been telling people, I have no idea, nothing's going on that I know of, and they aren't gonna be able to do anything there until they get something done. Something of this scope, the magnitude that it had with the city, I would have preferred that we had a lot more notification that was going on than just right now.
Sure. And with the Forest Edge, the emails were just exchanged yesterday, so I'll tell you as soon as I know more when we sort that out.
So do we think that, so between you guys and the planning commission, you think that retaining wall is going to resolve the issue at the complex on top of the hill, Berry Hill?
So the geotechs do, yes. So they hired a geotech to do a study. We had a city consultant geotech confirm that study. So it includes installation of. Did you ever see the retaining wall off I-5 on Terwilliger Curves where they had those I-beams and then they put the wood kind of the way? It's that exact same construction. It's built to those AASHTO standards for private property, which is not required. So it goes a little bit above and beyond. But it's all sort of a guess when it comes to geotech. I mean, there is a little bit.
I mean, there were geotechs that approved the Forest Edge apartment complexes when they were built.
It will do nothing for the lower part for Forest Edge. It's only for that upper part. So, but the property owner did think it was worth $1 million investment.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Other questions? Is that it?
That concludes my updates for tonight.
Anybody have anything?
I just got my thank you card from the scout troop.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay. For the good of the order, then we're adjourned.